whisper to you all the little boxes, and we look at all the little pictures, and I just kind of make this casual and fun and a little more lighthearted. So let's dive right in. Honduras in pictures. Here we can see a beautiful, beautiful coastline. Here's a map of Honduras. First, you can see where Honduras is located in the world in Central America. And here's a big map. You can see lots of the rivers, national parks, major cities. You can see the capital here, Tegucigalpa. Here we have some destruction from Hurricane Mitch. Really devastated the country. Some beautiful scenery here in this little town up in the green, lush mountains. Here's a more topical map of Honduras, so you can see the mountainous areas, the more lowlands, the Mosquito Coast, the various capes and lagoons along the Caribbean, Atlantic, and then the Pacific down here, the Pacific lowlands. There's a box here about Spanish place names. The names of Honduras' mountains, rivers, and other geographical features use the following Spanish terms. Bahia means bay, Cabo means cape, Cerro means hill, Cordillera means mountain range, Isla means island, Lago means lake, Laguna means lagoon, Montaña means mountain, Puerto means port, Rio means river, Sierra means mountain range, and Valle means valley. I always like to differentiate between a Cordillera and a Sierra. Cordillera is like a long mountain chain in my mind, and a Sierra is like a big mountain area. I hope you understand. There's kind of sort of a difference there. The Rio Copan, near the Copan ruins. There's a box about the hurricane. In 1998, Hurricane Mitch killed nearly 7,000 Hondurans. Flooding along Rio Choluteca was a major culprit. The river washed out whole neighborhoods in Tegucigalpa. It swelled to 6 times its normal size in the city of Choluteca, causing even more damage there. Then it destroyed entire villages as it continued to the sea. Here's another box about epiphytes. Honduras is home to many species of epiphytes, or plants that grow upon but do not draw nourishment from other plants. Epiphytes get moisture and nutrients from the air and rain. They grow abundantly in Honduran forests. They pile up on trees, crowding the branches. During heavy rains, the weight of water stored by epiphytes often becomes too much for their hosts. The great tree limbs crash to the ground and rip out sections of the trunk as they fall. Here's a beautiful scarlet macaw. I love their colorings. Here's a box about the father of the forest. Olancho Department, or state, lies in east central Honduras. Unregulated logging has destroyed more than half of Olancho's 12 million acres, or 5 million hectares of forest. As a result, precious topsoil is quickly eroding, rivers and springs are drying up, water supplies are polluted, and crops are failing. The powerful landowners, logging companies, drug traffickers, and crime bosses control Olancho's lands. These people have threatened and murdered ordinary citizens who oppose logging. Many citizens have fled. Rancho, an alliance of farmers and other residents determined to stop the devastation. In 2003 and 2004, he led thousands of people on 2-week-long marches to Tegucigalpa. The marches led to a government investigation of Honduras' forestry agency. Tamayo has endured harassment and violent assault. Crime bosses have put a price on his head, but still he presses on. There he is here. Very good cause, isn't it? And here's the capital city, Tegucigalpa. This is definitely Copan, the most famous Mayan ruins in Honduras. There's a box about it here. Copan is home to the hieroglyphic stairway, the longest Maya text ever discovered. Thousands of glyphs or symbols carved into stone blocks make up the stairway. The glyphs recount the births, rise to power, important rituals, and other achievements, parentage, and deaths of the city's most important rulers. There's Christopher Columbus. We all know him. There's Hernan Cortez. Most of you probably know him. And Pedro de Alvarado. Some of you may know him. They're all in the same boat. All three of those men would be besties today if they were around. Thankfully, they're burning in hell. Here's Francisco Morazan. Francisco Morazan, a Honduran liberal, was president of the Federal Republic of Central America from 1830 to 1840. He tried to transform Central America into a progressive nation via reforms such as freedom of speech, press and religion, trial by jury, and equality of all people before the law. Although his presidency ended with the Federation's breakup, most Central Americans admire his vision and intelligence. They remember him as a hero and call him the George Washington of Central America. In Honduras, many place names honor him. And here's a box about William Walker. Never heard of this guy. You're about to do just not believe this story. It's so wild. In the 1850s, a U.S. citizen named William Walker set out to privately conquer parts of Latin America. He wanted to create slaveholding states ruled by English-speaking white people. After a failed effort in Mexico, in 1854, Walker led a hired army in Nicaragua's then raging civil war. He took control of Nicaragua in 1855 and declared himself president in 1856. He then announced a plan to take over the rest of Central America. Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and Costa Rica joined forces against Walker and drove him out in 1857. In 1859, the United Kingdom, formerly the Kingdom of England, returned the Islas de la Bahia to Honduras, since the UK had seized them during the Federation years. Some British settlers on the islands asked Walker for help, and he arrived in 1860. But most of the British and all of the Hondurans opposed him. Hondurans executed Walker a few days later. Right, isn't that the craziest story? The audacity, right? We're not going to read this box because it's literally just explaining what communism is. Don't worry about it. If you don't know, Google it. But we will read this box about the soccer war. In the late 1960s, about 300,000 Salvadorans were living illegally in Honduras. The newcomers aggravated the Honduran land shortage. In April 1969, Mayan settlers remaining in Honduras. Thousands more Salvadoran immigrants left. El Salvador responded by breaking off diplomatic relations, sealing its borders, and invading Honduras. The war killed more than 2,000 people, mostly civilians. It left thousands more homeless. It damaged the economies of both countries. A state of war between the two nations lasted until they signed a peace treaty in 1980. Like, one of the fun facts about Honduras and El Salvador is, did you know they once had a war over soccer? And it's like, well, yeah, but listen, it was not lighthearted. It was very serious. Here's some more hurricane damage. This was in the 1970s, Hurricane Fifi. And here is a Salvadoran refugee camp in Honduras. This is Manuel Zelaya. He was president when this book came out. There's some wonderful faces here. And we got some different examples of some of the more poor homes, some more kind of slum style thrown together homes. And then in the villages we have homes made out of straw and wood and looks like mud brick. Baby here's getting vaccinated. Very, very good. Very important. And they're working hard in school. And we are reading at home. Very important also to read to your littles. Always read to your littles. If you're ever just bored sitting around at home with your kids, just be like, let's grab a book, let's go, let's read. There's no losing there. It's wonderful. Let's read this box. Some people say the name mosquito comes from the word mosquito or musket. If you don't know, a musket's an old-fashioned gun. The mosquito themselves say they descend from a community led by a man named Miscut. In their language, the phrase Miscut Ablikanani means the people of Miscut. The mosquito shortened this phrase to mosquito. So yeah, when you hear about the Mosquito Coast, it's not named that because it's covered in mosquitoes. It probably is covered in mosquitoes, let's be real, but it's named after the Mosquito indigenous tribe. Here's another interesting group of people that lives in Honduras, the Garifuna. Let's read about Garifuna history. In 1635, two Spanish ships carrying African slaves sank off the coast of St. Vincent, an island in the Caribbean Sea. The surviving Africans sheltered with the island's Carib people. The two peoples blended through marriage, creating the Garifuna ethnic group. When French settlers arrived in the late 1600s, they coexisted peacefully with the Garifuna. But when British colonists and soldiers arrived in the 1700s, war broke out. The French and the Garifuna surrendered to the British in 1796. The British imprisoned about 5,000 Garifuna in a concentration camp on the nearby island of Balaso. Half the Garifuna died on Balaso. In 1797, the British deported the survivors to Roatan, the largest island in the Islas de la Bahia. The Garifuna prospered there. They established fishing villages and grew cassava, which is a starchy edible root. Their descendants live today as the Garifuna people of Belize, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. Looks like it's a wedding celebration here. The bride looks beautiful. The little flower girls don't look very excited, but they look very sweet, don't they? They look like they've been there way too long and they're tired and they just don't care anymore, but it's a beautiful bride decision. Let's read about women in Honduras. especially in agriculture and service industries. Yet they live in greater poverty than men. Women also are more likely to die from lack of health care. But conditions for Honduran women are slowly improving. In 1997, Honduras changed its laws to make domestic violence and sexual harassment crimes. In 2000, the government established several public agencies to root out unfair treatment of women in government and business activities. In 2005, women made up about 1/4 of Congress and half of the Supreme Court. Many Honduran women hope that with more attention to their plight and more women in leadership, life for all women in Honduras will change for the better. There's a lovely church here. It's all very yellow, and you can see the pretty paintings there. Let's read about Catholic social activism. In the 1960s, the Honduran Catholic Church began to speak out against the country's unfair government. It denounced military and government abuse of the people, especially poor workers and farmers. In 1975, rich landowners responded by brutally murdering 10 peasants, 2 students, and 2 priests. The government arrested priests and shut down church-sponsored community organizations. The church retreated briefly in the late 1970s, but then took up the cause of social justice again. It remains a strong voice for ordinary Hondurans in the 21st century. We got a shop sign here in Marqueta Lempira. Lempira, if you don't know, is a very important figure in Honduran history. It was a indigenous Honduran, right? Who fought for their rights against the Spanish and lost his life. Now the Lempira is the name for their currency, but you see the name Lempira everywhere, including this market, and they've got all kinds of stuff for sale. You can get some pollo, carne salada, etc. We're gonna skip this box because I'm not gonna try to pronounce Garifuna and mosquito words. No, thank you. This box says, adults in Honduras often tell duende folktales to frighten children into behaving well. The duende is a mischievous gnome. Sometimes he wanders the forest, whistling beautiful songs to lure young girls. Sometimes he hides in house walls, emerging to clip the toenails and often the toes of messy children. If you have some kind of cultural children's punishment that you grew up with, let me know, because those are some of my favorite stories. What did your parents tell you as a kid that made you scared into behaving? We don't really have that in the United States. It's more like Santa won't bring you presents. We don't have like a creature that'll come get you. So I like to hear stories. We've got some kids here playing some soccer. And we are grinding up some maize here on the stone. There's bananas. Very important part of Honduras' history is the bananas and the fruit industry. We got some vegetables for sale here. Some tomatoes, potatoes maybe, avocados maybe. These are coffee beans and they're being laid out to dry here. See this box? It says, forced labor to earn foreign cash. That's an interesting way of thinking about remittances. Let's read about drug trafficking. Honduras has a serious drug trafficking or trade problem. Colombian cocaine smugglers use Honduras as a stopover when shipping drugs to the United States. Most of the smuggling happens at sea. Honduras's Caribbean coast is sparsely settled and poorly policed. Honduran drug organizations based there use small boats to help Colombian organizations move cocaine northward. Some drug shipments travel through Honduras along the Pan American Highway. Other drug shipments arrive by small planes that land on isolated Honduran roads. The drugs then travel north by truck. In February 2008, President Zelaya proposed legalizing drug use, not only in Honduras but throughout Central and North America. He said that doing so would free up government resources, weaken drug smugglers, and reduce violent crime. Honduras suffers an average of 10 murders per day, 7 of which result from the international drug trade. Moving on, because sometimes YouTube does not like this topic. Moving right along. Beautiful coastline. Here's that gorgeous. Oh, that's the end. But in this book series, we read this very last page over here. The sights to see. The first sight to see is the Selake Mountains National Park. Selake Mountains National Park in western Honduras is one of the nation's most impressive nature preserves. It consists entirely of lush, steep cloud forest. It boasts Cerro de las Minas, Honduras' highest peak. The park contains 11 rivers and a majestic waterfall. Selake is also home to a 232 plant species, 48 kinds of mammals, 269 bird species, and 18 kinds of reptiles. Hikers sometimes spot jaguars, pumas, ocelots, spider monkeys, and quetzals. The one that I want to see the most in Honduras is the ruins of Copan. Hold this carefully. Ruins in the ancient Maya city of Copan lie in the Copan Ruins Archaeological Park, adjacent to the town of Copan Ruinas. Copan is one of the most important sites of the Maya civilization. Its ruined citadel and imposing public squares reveal the 3 main stages of development before the city was abandoned in the early 900s. The United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, has named Copan a World Heritage Site for its value to mankind. Next is Lago de Yohoa. Lago de Yohoa is Honduras' largest and most beautiful natural lake. Towering mountains surround it. These mountains contain 2 national parks, Cerro Azul Mayambar and Santa Barbara. Within the latter lies Honduras' second highest peak, Montaña Santa Barbara. Lago de Yohoa is a favorite among bird watchers, who have identified more than 375 species along its shores. It is also a hiking and bass fishing hotspot. Nearby, Los Naranjos is home to a Lenca eco-archaeological park. Next is the Rio Platano Biosphere Reserve. The Rio Platano Biosphere Reserve is one of the largest protected areas in Central America. Like Copan, it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It includes undisturbed rainforest, coastal lagoons, beaches, to botanical gardens, butterfly and iguana farms, family recreational areas, forest canopy tours, and picturesque villages, beaches, and bays. It sounds so nice. That is the end of our book for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this style of content, please consider subscribing. And I hope that you found this video to be relaxing and educational. And I hope that you have a good